everyone, welcome back to In Her Rubber Boots. My name is Katrina and today I want to share with you a Q&A. I've never done a Q&A before and I'm actually doing one based on my experience as someone who was homeschooled for all grades. So I thought that this might be kind of interesting, especially with everyone going back to school right now and a lot of people either homeschooling or considering homeschooling. So if you're new to my channel, I just wanted to say welcome and tell you just a little bit about myself. I am married to my husband Will. We live on a dairy farm in Ontario, Canada. And we have two little boys, a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old. So the first question is, was it your mom or dad or both that homeschooled you? It was my mom that did the majority of the homeschooling. My dad did French on Saturday mornings, which I despised, partially because I didn't enjoy learning French, and partially because it was Saturday morning and I didn't want to be doing schoolwork on the weekends, especially when all of my friends were not in school. Now, Caitlin was commenting from the channel Ask Mom that she found a lot of people asked growing up, could you do your schoolwork in your pajamas? Did you get to sleep in? For me, the answer was yes. I mean, if I wanted to work in my pajamas, I don't remember my mom ever telling me I had to get dressed. I just did get dressed because I didn't have any desire to be in my pajamas all day. And as far as sleeping in, I was never one to sleep in. I don't even think I knew how to sleep in when I was younger. I just popped out of bed early in the morning, so I don't think that sleeping in ever really occurred to me. So I got a few questions about how structured my quote-unquote classes were or homeschooling in general. For me, growing up, it was not very structured. I suppose maybe in, kindergarten, maybe it was a little bit more structured. I can't really remember the details of kindergarten, but I know that as I got older, the main thing is that I had to get done a certain amount of pages or lessons in each subject. And however I wanted to really go about that was up to me. So it wasn't like my mom said, okay, school starts at 8:30, now you sit down and I'm the teacher. It was, these are the books and you can either work at the table or you can go and work somewhere else as long as you're getting your work done. So it was not structured in the sense of we didn't have a classroom or a certain spot that I had to sit or work, but it was structured in the sense that I knew what I had to do subject-wise and I had curriculum that we followed. So the next question is did you feel like you were missing out on social events such as things like prom? I don't think that I felt like I was missing out. I think when you're homeschooled, starting in kindergarten, it's not like you're doing certain things and then all of a sudden you can't do them. You just never did those things, so you don't even necessarily know what you're missing out on. I didn't have a real desire to do prom, but I do know that there has been homeschooling groups in the past that have done a homeschooling prom, so that way kids don't miss out on that. I never did that. I didn't really care that much. I did take some pictures, I think maybe grade 12 in a kind of grad dress, but other than pictures, I didn't really care. So I got this asked a couple of times in sort of different ways, and that was, did you get distracted at home, or did you find it hard to focus at home? I thought that it was easier to focus at home than in a classroom with other kids. Now, I mean, I'm saying that and I never actually went really to school, but I did do a few different things where I was with other kids. And I found it hard to focus when there was other kids. So if anything, for me, it was less distracting to be at home than it was to be in a classroom. Now, the next question was, did my parents work? So my dad worked full-time. He worked long hours. But my mom was a stay-at-home mom all through my childhood. So I always had her, and I think that made homeschooling for her a lot easier than if she was trying to balance a job at the same time. The next question was, what was the most challenging part of homeschooling? For me, I don't know. I think the homeschooling itself was not challenging. Maybe the most challenging was figuring out how to get into college after and, knowing where you fit in friend groups and that kind of thing when you were maybe the only homeschooler. But other than that, I would say there wasn't really a lot of challenges that I personally had with homeschooling. Someone asked if I could go back in time, would I still want to be homeschooled? The answer is absolutely. I am so thankful that I was homeschooled. I don't think that homeschooling is for everyone, and I don't think that schooling is always better, but for me, it was a really good experience. I think that it taught me a lot of life skills that I wouldn't have in the same way if I hadn't been homeschooled. I think homeschooling gave me a lot more independence because I wanted to do my work on my own. I was a lot more self-driven because I knew that these were the subjects that needed to be done for the day, and so I would get up and I would do those subjects. Not every day did I do that, but a lot of times I would just get up and do my work and have it done early in the day so that way I could then play or do whatever I wanted. And I think that that was a skill that I was able to take with me real life in college and that sort of thing, is just knowing how to stay motivated and to just get work done without having someone telling me to do work. I also got a lot of questions about testing. It depends where you're homeschooled as to what the rules are. So for me growing up, we didn't have to do tests like every year for, say, the school board or anything like that. I do believe there was one test, I don't know how old I was, it might have been grade 7 or 8 or something like that, that they made us do. I passed it. I could not tell you exactly how well I did on it. I do think standardized testing can be really difficult when you're being homeschooled because a lot of times you're not learning stuff the exact same way as everyone else. That is the beauty of homeschooling, is that you don't have to learn things exactly the same way as everyone else. So you might not be on the same level for each grade as everyone else, but it doesn't matter. Everyone learns at their own pace. Some kids might be at a different level for grade 2, but then by the time they're in grade 4, they're fully caught up. So I think standardized testing is only good for some kids. Then kids who learn differently or at a different pace are going to look bad on standardized testing, but it doesn't mean that they're going to do bad overall in life. Now, when it comes to a diploma, I never got my high school diploma. I know, dare I put that on the internet? That can be, it's a lot of testing to do to get it. And I just never cared enough to actually have that piece of paper. I finished grade 12 as far as curriculum goes. I just never bothered to get my actual diploma. Now, it never held me back when I wanted to go to college, which I did. I went to Mohawk College in Hamilton, and I took a 2-year program in travel and tourism, and I got honors. So I didn't have any problems there, and as far as getting in goes, I applied as a mature student. Then I just had to write an entry exam to get in instead of having to have paperwork for high school. And funny enough, I was very nervous to write this exam because I really had no idea what it was going to be like. My mom was pretty convinced that I wouldn't be able to do it, but I surprised her and everyone else by doing excellent on the exam. I actually didn't find the exam to be very difficult and was pleasantly surprised to find college to be, to me, quite simple. It's not that I didn't have to study, I still had to work hard, but I found it really easy to get good grades. I just had to work really hard, and I found myself, doing study groups and tutoring and helping out a lot of my peers, and I don't think I was any smarter than they were, but I had a really good work ethic, and I enjoyed learning, and I wanted to be there. And so for me, college was a good experience and a good way to prove to myself, really, that even though I was homeschooled, I could still handle the school system and, do the tests and write the papers and all of that with my homeschooling experience. The next question is, how long did you homeschool each day? The younger years and in the older years. I would have to ask my mom how long I spent on schooling when I was really young, but I don't think it was more than an hour or two when I was in kindergarten or, say, grade 1 or 2. As I got older, it definitely became more hours. By the time I was in high school, I probably had 5 or 6 hours of work to do in a day. I also, though, tended to do extra lessons and try to get ahead so that I could finish my schooling in April or May and have a really long summer. Instead of working until June, I then had, 4 months off for summer, and I thought that was amazing. I think this is the number one question that gets asked, whether you tell people you were homeschooled or you tell them that you want to homeschool your kids. This is like the number one question, and that is, what about friends? What about socializing? There's so many different ways that I could answer this. As far as friends for myself, I lived in a neighborhood that had lots of kids. I had lots of cousins my age. I had homeschooling friends. We were part of a couple of homeschooling groups. I was part of youth groups. I volunteered. The list goes on and on. I honestly had no problem in the social circles. And I think that surprised some people, because I think that a lot of people feel that homeschooling goes hand in hand with being socially awkward. The next question is did you do extracurricular activities or programs? Yes, some of them. Like I did gymnastics and I did swimming. I didn't do like a ton of extra stuff. I, did random things here and there. Like we would go skating. There was, free skating. And so we would go with a bunch of other homeschoolers. I learned to ski going with homeschoolers to, specific days that they would organize for homeschoolers. So someone asked about curriculum, or if we just kind of followed my interests. I know I already kind of talked about curriculum. Like, yes, we did curriculum. We didn't just stick with one company. So there's like so many different curriculums out there, and we didn't do, say one curriculum for every subject. My parents would pick based on how they liked each subject. So I definitely did curriculum, but sometimes it would be different curriculum for different subjects. Now, I did have someone ask what sort of homeschooling style I had, or what kind of homeschooling style I thought fit me, or what I think I want to do for the kids. My mom's homeschooling style was very much, this is the curriculum says this is how we're supposed to do it, and that's what we're going to do. I think because at the time, homeschooling was not trendy or as common, and so I think she was just trying to make sure that I was doing what needed to be done to keep up with, kids that were my age or in my grade, because she had a lot of people that were keeping an eye on what she was doing or unsure of if homeschooling was really a good idea. And so I think she wanted to make sure that I wasn't behind or, learning at a slower pace than other kids my age. I think my style would be much more outside of the box. I think part of the reason for that is because I was homeschooled myself, so I didn't have the classroom experience to try and recreate. Like, I don't have that in my head of this is what school looks like, and therefore my kids have to have school but at home. I think homeschool is not really what it should be called. It should just be called like home education, because you're just really teaching your kids at home. You're not trying to create classroom or, recreate school at home. So yeah, all of that to say, like, I think the most important is what the kids are learning. So, if you want your kids to learn to read, then it doesn't matter how you go about it, so long as they're learning how to read. If you want them to know how to do addition, they don't have to sit down with workbooks or even pen and paper. If you can get them to do that in other ways, then what matters is that they're learning it and that it's sticking in their brain so that they can use it later. So I was asked, was I homeschooled alone or was I homeschooled with siblings? I do have a younger sister, but she is 5.5 years younger. So I would say I was homeschooled alone because we really were too far apart in age to do any subjects together. And that was not really my mom's style anyways. I don't know if she would have homeschooled us together even if we had been closer in age. She was very much about what the curriculum was and following, each lesson that day. So someone asked what the pros and cons are of homeschooling. I don't know if that meant pros and cons for me or for someone that's going to homeschool. I sort of said earlier that there wasn't a lot of things that I felt were negative in my childhood growing up, So for me, they were mostly pros. Cons would be just the fact that I was different than other kids, and so sometimes that made it more difficult, and getting into, college, university can be more difficult, or having to write, some sort of an exam for getting your diploma. Those would be, to me, the cons. But the pros, to me, there's like unlimited amounts of pros to it. The flexibility, I was able to go places and do so much more because I was not stuck in school. I was able to follow more of my own interests and do things that if I had been in school, I wouldn't have had the hours to do. I started working at a younger age. I delivered newspapers, I babysat, then I nannied, I worked in an ice cream shop, all of that stuff while I was still in high school. I also really learned to interact with people of all ages because I didn't spend the majority of my time with kids my own age. I was with people right from, baby to elderly. And so I learned to interact with those people and made friends with those people. And I think those are really good skills to have in life because when you're an adult, you don't spend all of your time with just people of your own age. You interact with people of all ages. So knowing how to interact with people was super important, and I think set me up for success. So someone asked what my favorite part of homeschooling was. I think I've sort of already touched on some of this, but for me, my favorite part would be the flexibility. Just being able to get ahead and, take a week off if I wanted to, or be done early in the school year, that sort of thing. I had the control to do that. So I had a few people who are starting out wanting to homeschool, and they're wanting to know, where do I even start? He's spitting up. Where do I even start, and, what sort of a routine do I need, or what kind of curriculum do I need, all of that, and it can be super overwhelming. I think if you go about it as just an extension of what you would do with your kids when they're not being homeschooled, really all you're doing is you're just teaching them at home. So you've already taught them at home how to do other things, maybe how to ride their bike, or how to hold a crayon to draw a picture, or how to build with blocks. You're just doing that, but on another level. So you've already been teaching them, right? You're their parent, you've been teaching them, or grandparent, and so all you're doing is just taking that to another level. So I think as far as starting out goes, I think start off by figuring out what you want them to learn and go backwards from there. So if this year you want them to know how to read, then start with what curriculum or activities or things do I need for them to learn how to read. Don't try to do too many things at the same time. So if you have little ones, don't think that you're going to teach them everything all at the same time. Do one thing and focus on that. Once they master that, move on to something else, but still review what you've already learned. So if they're learning colors, then, teach them one color a day, and then review the colors they've learned the other days so that they don't lose that. But don't try to teach them all the colors at the same time because they'll be overwhelmed and lose interest, and you'll be frustrated because they're not catching on. So just one small concept at a time. Now my recommendations for curriculum, oh boy, there's so many different styles, there's so many different curriculums out there. If you're starting off, don't go and buy a whole bunch of different stuff because it will probably take you a little bit to figure out what your style is, what your kid's style is, and if homeschooling is for you and all of that. And homeschooling curriculum can get really expensive. So I would start off with just some easy little workbooks, even stuff you can pick up cheap from Costco or places like that, and start off seeing how it goes and what you enjoy and what the kids are struggling with. Maybe certain stuff they fly through that you thought that they were going to need more time on and they don't. And maybe there's other things that you realize wow, you're really struggling with this. And then you can try and find curriculum or books that touch on those subjects or, work more heavily on the areas that they actually need the help. So my other advice to parents starting out is don't try to make it school at home. I know I've already said this in this video, but don't try to just recreate school at home. That takes away from the benefits of homeschooling is when you're trying to just make it school. So make learning fun. Go for a walk, get out in nature, decide you're going to do an arts and crafts day, go to a museum. I realize, with the virus, we can't do the things that we always did, but there's still some stuff you can do, even if you're not going to the library. Order some books off of Amazon or pick them up in a secondhand store on subjects that, your kids are interested in, and build off of their interests rather than trying to teach them stuff that they could care less about. And as they follow those interests, that will lead to other things as well. And I think if a child is interested in learning, it's very easy to teach them. If you're trying to teach them things that they don't like, it'll be harder to teach. Now, I realize saying that there's some stuff you have to teach them that they don't like, but if you can do it in a way that incorporates it into a subject or activity that they already enjoy, then that will at least help. So I think this is a really good question, and that is, what stigmas surround homeschooling? And I think there's quite a few. I would say growing up, I always had to answer a lot of questions about homeschooling. As soon as I told people I was homeschooled, you could be guaranteed I was going to get a bunch of questions. Everything from just some curiosity to parents asking me questions that I already knew as a child that they were checking to see if my mom was doing a good job. And so it'd be like, oh, so do you do math every day? And does your mom check your work? And how's reading going? Stuff like that, where looking back, I'm like, why were you guys asking me that? I was just a kid, But yeah, there was definitely a lot of that. And I sometimes would avoid telling people I was homeschooled, even as an adult, because it would just open a big can of worms. And I got a lot of mixed responses from people. Sometimes it would just sort of be like, people like, oh, okay, wow, homeschool, and you kind of knew that they right away had a stereotype in their mind, and they just right away put you in that category and just assumed that you were that kind of a person. And I think a lot of that is people think that if you're homeschooled, that you had no social interaction, you're probably socially awkward, you possibly aren't very smart, and that's why you were homeschooled. Now, some of those things are true, some of them are not, and everything just depends on which family you grew up in and what homeschooling was like for you. Everyone has a different experience. So I would say there's a lot of stigmas around homeschooling. But having said that, I would say that now that it is growing in popularity, people are more familiar with it, more people are homeschooling themselves. I think that it is shifting a little, that people are finding it to be a little more normal. It's like, you go to school, okay, do you go to regular public school, or you go to private school, or are you homeschooled? It's just another form of education now. So I would say all that to say that I overall thought homeschooling was a positive experience. I hope to homeschool myself because I think that it's a great way to educate my own kids. I do realize homeschooling is not for everyone, and that's okay. Everyone has a different way of learning, and so I do think that some people do better being homeschooled, and some parents do better teaching homeschool than others. But I do think that for my own personal experience, I am very happy that I was homeschooled. I do recommend homeschooling, and I think that once you get started, you can realize the options are endless. There's so many things you can do, and that you don't have to just try and create school at home, but you can have your own new normal and teach it in a way that suits your family and how your kids learn. So my advice in regards to having a routine and how much you need to teach, it depends obviously on their age, but as far as I'm concerned, focus on what they need to learn and not how many hours you're putting in. If your kid's attention span is 20 minutes, then do 20 minutes, maybe 2 or 3 times in a day. Try and get through the core subjects first, so the things that are like math and writing and reading, spelling, those kinds of things. And then as they're sort of losing interest in those subjects, switch to the fun stuff. Something that you're studying for history or geography or something like that, that's an interest of theirs that you can kind of make fun. Now, I would say for most kids, the morning is probably the best time to get stuff done before they've started getting tired or cranky, but you know your kids best. That is the beauty of homeschooling. So if there's a better time to teach your kids, go ahead. If the evening is the best time, then why not? they can play all day long. If you think you can do homeschooling in the evenings and it will be more productive than doing it during the day, that's totally up to you. So that's the beauty of homeschooling. Do it when it suits you, when it suits them. You have to make it a priority, but you don't have to do it the way school does it. You don't have to teach for as many hours as school does, because the truth is that school is the length that it is because they can't spend one-on-one time with each kid. So they need a lot of time to be able to get through all of the teaching. You don't need that. You don't need busy time. You don't need to try and spread out schooling to last for the whole day. You just need to teach them the things that they need to learn. So don't be scared to let them take their math book and sit in bed in their pajamas, or take their spelling and go and sit outside at a picnic table. You don't have to do it at the table. You don't have to do it at a desk. You can do it however you want. The important part is that they're learning and that they're grasping and retaining the information that they need to be. So if you guys enjoyed this, I would love it if you would give a thumbs up. If you are homeschooling yourself or you were homeschooled, I would love it if you let me know in the comments below. If you have other questions on homeschooling or on my experience or anything homeschooling related, you can leave those in the comments below as well, and I will answer them there. If you guys are new to my channel and you haven't already subscribed, I would love it if you would subscribe and join the community here, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!